All right, well, since we're already on the PlayStation topics, do you want to talk about these supposed leaked PlayStation 6 specs?
Yeah, so there has been a leak that the PS6 design is already out, the specs leak. So it's going to be using, this is actually one of the key noted things here, is going to be using the 3D V cache, which is part of the AMD X3D. Now, I'm not the best at explaining what all of this means, but essentially, it is just the way that the uh, processors work is more efficient and stuff, and so it makes them better at gaming. I think as far as with the at least with the X3D CPUs, the Ryzen CPUs, they're essentially pretty much dedicated primarily only for gaming. So like using them for any type of work, any sort of production work isn't that great. It's actually a bit more of a detriment. But as far as with gaming goes, these things are pretty much ideal for gaming and dedicated for gaming. So if the PS6 has this, it can definitely be a big game changer with what it can do. And it's also using Zen 6, which is definitely, I think, I can't remember if the current, or at least what would be the current, if not upcoming, Ryzen chips are using Zen 6. Let me just quickly double check that. But if it is using Zen 6, then it definitely will be up to date. If not, well, actually, no. Let me see here. Using Zen. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I'm sorry. Not Zen 6. Yeah. So Zen 6 actually is not part of that's actually the graphics. So, that would be that would be pretty much next gen stuff, which is again something that would be pretty up to date on things. And let me see what else I have here as far as the specs go. Just pull this up here. Whoops. So I had the article up earlier. Let me see the architecture here, but I think those were the core steps, or stuff that wasn't too technical. But yeah, and then also like one last thing is the fact that it's speculated, or at least according to this leak, the PS6 would be coming out in 2028. So that would be about 3 years from now, give or take. But with that being said, though, what are your thoughts on all of this information?
Well, I watched that video that you sent me, and wow. I don't understand. Well, I shouldn't say I don't understand. I cannot believe that fanboys are so delusional to actually think that this is real. Now, the potential release of 2028, I say that's believable. But that's the only thing about this whole thing that's believable. It sounds like the majority of what they're saying here is stuff that either the technology does not exist and it's just theoretical, even if it does, even if it is something we know is coming, like it's confirmed is coming along, them saying that, oh, it's going to have all this power. It is a fanboy's dream that it's going to be like this. But it's the same thing as the people who have been saying that the PS5 Pro, or even the PS5 itself, is equal to a 4090 or a 5090. It's like, you guys, you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. It's funny that video that you sent me, it's very clear that this is a PlayStation-focused, PlayStation fanboy channel. They were saying that, Mark Cerny said that the PS5 Pro has elements of RDNA 2, 3, and 4, and so it's basically RDNA 4. I mean, is what this person said. I'm like, that's not what Mark Cerny said. He said that it has elements of 2 and 3, and then he's calling it 2.x. He literally called it. I mean, this was in like a recent breakdown that he was talking about this and talking about the rumored teraflops being 3.7, and said that's not accurate at all. and that people are using as the term that he used was flopflation, where they're saying that something's way more powerful than it actually is. And it's just, when I hear stuff like this, them saying that it's going to have all these theoretical specs, it brings me back to not just, what happened with the PS5 and that sort of thing, but back to certain YouTube channels before the original Switch launched, or even after the Switch launched, who were saying that the Switch was going to be like this ultra powerful. I mean, that it wasn't going to be called the Switch at the time, because at the time they didn't think that it was going to be a hybrid. They thought it was just going to be a powerful home console, and they're talking about all these super specs that it's going to have and all this stuff. And it's like, there's a nail in the coffin, that this, for based on what Nintendo said, the nail in the coffin, that this hybrid theory is dead. It's not real. And then of course we actually saw the Switch and found out it was completely real, and they were completely wrong. And so then they start going into the Switch Pro mode of talking about things. Or before that, there was like, there was both the Switch Pro saying that, there's going to be this powerful Switch Pro, and they talked about it for years and years until it eventually got to the point where it's like, okay, I guess I can't talk about Switch Pro anymore because it's obviously not happening. And then, there was another, this particular channel I'm thinking of. I'm not going to call him out because if you know who he is, you know who he is, and I don't really feel like he deserves any hate. I felt like a lot of his stuff was very much reading into things, but he was saying at one point that that Sony was going to be doing a PSP3, and this was years ago. This was like probably it was either 2017 or 2018, and that they were going to announce it at Tokyo Game Show, like a September Tokyo Game Show is always in September, but that it was going to be like announced at like 3 a.m. or something, and he's talking about, it's going to have like this laptop chipset, this laptop graphics card and stuff like that, and I'm just like, I don't think you understand how these things work. I mean, I'm no expert, not by any stretch, but you can't put a laptop graphics card in a handheld device. It just doesn't work that way, especially not at the time. I mean, nowadays, technology's a lot further along. You potentially could do stuff like that, but in general, it's like, no, you can't do that. The power consumption would be too much, even if you could fit it in there and it wouldn't get super hot. Even if you managed to get the cooling right, the power consumption would be way too high. There's no way this would work in a handheld. And now you have, I've seen this especially with first the PlayStation 5 Pro and now the PlayStation 6, where they're using all these either theoretical or confirmed future versions of RDNA, of Zen processors, all of that, and saying that the PS6 is going to have this stuff in it. It's going to have the current technology. And that does not happen. It never happens. Consoles never have current technology. Now, they may have it in some aspects. Like at the time that the PS5 launched, it had a better M2 processor than we have in PC. It didn't take long for PC to catch up from that standpoint, and it was already leagues ahead in every other area. But, when it comes to these supposed leaked specs, I always take them not just with a grain of salt, but with like a tub of salt, like a bag of salt. I use these bags of salt for my water softener, and it's like these are 40, 50-pound bags. I dump a bunch of those in, and it's basically like I would take the 10 bags of salt and consider them to be basically how much I trust these rumors. Because I buy 10 bags of salt at a time. It's so delusional, and I think that people just need to have realistic expectations when it comes to consoles. By the time they are that powerful, it will be they'll still be probably 5 to 10 years behind. Well, probably not 10 years, probably more like 5 years. But they're going to be really far behind. And they're always going to be behind. Consoles, I guess maybe there is a theoretical possibility in the future that consoles could catch up. But the reality is that as long as they're priced the way they are always going to be behind in technology. They're not going to be using the latest stuff at all. And that's fine. they're at a lower price point. You still get a good machine that's capable of doing what you want it to do, even though it's not actually rendering at 4K. It's just upscaling the heck out of the 720p to 1080p, sometimes 1440p image. It's like, it's upscaling. That's all it's doing. It's not rendering at 4K. You're not getting anywhere close to 4K, and your machine is nowhere near powerful enough to do 4K. Most machines are not powerful enough to do 4K 60. Now, when you have the higher end graphics cards, your 3090s up, through 4090s, you're up to 4090 and 5090, you have all those graphics cards. Yeah, 4K is a lot more doable. But even then, especially with Unreal Engine 5, it just ends up being even worse optimized, and it's all nonsense. And I think that people just need to take a breath, take a step back, and realize what they're actually getting. You're not going to get more for your money than you think you're getting. Now, it may be a great value to you, and that's wonderful. You like playing on consoles? By all means, keep doing it. Keep buying consoles, regardless of the fact that they're in some ways kind of ripping you off, but at the same time, I get it. It's simple. It's simple. You can just upgrade whenever they upgrade for you. You don't feel like you have to upgrade more often than that, whereas PC gamers supposedly have to upgrade all the time, every time a new graphics card comes out, which is not true at all, by the way. I haven't upgraded my graphics card in 6 years.
What blasphemy!
And I still have a more powerful PC by a large margin than what you get with your top-end console right now. But, yeah. Oh, I kind of lost my train of thought in terms of where I was going with this, but, yeah, TLDL, the PS6, while it is undoubtedly being worked on right now, is not going to be powerful. It's going to be more powerful than the PS5 and the PS5 Pro, without question. But it's not going to be using the latest tech. It might be using little bits and pieces, but it's not going to be using the latest and greatest. It just never will be. They will not put that kind of money into it because they will have to charge you a whole lot more if they do that. And they're not going to do that because they want it to be reasonably affordable. Now, the PS6 will definitely launch at $700, maybe more. That's just the way it's going to go, like it or not, especially because enough people bought the PS5 Pro to where they're like, okay, yep, we can get away with this. They'll spend the money, and then they'll do a Pro model that'll be $850 probably, including the disk drive, if they still have a disk drive by that point. But anyway, I've talked enough. Go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, I definitely largely agree with everything you said. This is definitely much more than they're making it out to be. Now, I will throw them a bone and say I could possibly see the PS5 and I guess whatever Xbox console comes out as well, possibly having the 3D cache because of the fact that when the PS5 and Xbox Series launched, that technology wasn't available at the time, and only I think probably about a year or so later with after AMD put out the Ryzen 5 5000 series CPUs, then they started to have X3D, and that's what the first time they launched it. And then since then, there was only one CPU that had it, but then they, with the 7000 CPUs, they had I think 3 or 4 different X3D CPUs, and then I don't think they have any right now since the 9000 series just launched, but I think it's pretty reasonable to think that X3D is going to be coming out within a year or so. So while it might not be, say, like the latest version of X3D, I think it could be possible that X3D could make it into the PS6, even if it is, say, an older version of X3D. Mm-hmm. But for everything else, though, yeah, I definitely agree that it's definitely pretty far-fetched. But I do think it's funny, though, sitting how PS fanboys were saying, oh, the PS5 Pro is going to blow everything off the water. It's gonna make your PCs look like trash. And they're getting hyped up for the PS6 because I guess the PS5 Pro didn't deliver on those promises. And so it's just gonna be a cycle that continues. And I mean, considering the fact that, it could be the same thing with the PS5 when that launches and they say, whoa, we're getting 4K 60. And our box says it has 8K on it. That means it's better. It's got 8K, which means every game has 8K. And that's not just it displays out to 8K or possible to display out to 8K. And we're probably going to do that other thing again where people say, like, yeah, we've got Returnal and it looks great and stuff. And then give it like a year or so, they're begging for a pro version. And just like, well, what happened to that PS6, spectacular graphics, dazzling resolution that you were boasting that was going to have? So, yeah, I do agree that this is definitely possibly much larger than they think it is, but it could be possible that they do have the 3D, the V3D in the CPU. I think it's possible. I'm not saying it will happen, but that's something I find at least somewhat plausible because AMD has been doing this at least twice already through 2 generations. So,
right,
it's possible.
Yeah, and I could definitely agree with that. I mean, my main point was more just that it's not going to be the latest and greatest. Now, having the technology, like the earlier versions of the technology, yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. That will most likely happen, but going to the latest and the greatest and somehow surpassing PCs that cost significantly more, it's just like, it just doesn't work that way, no matter how much you want it to. And you need to just be okay with that. But people don't understand how any of this works. And, like, I get it. I mean, I still don't even fully understand how all of this works. It wasn't until fairly recently that I even fully realized that the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, most games are still not rendering at 4K. Now, there are a handful of games that do, but the majority of them are rendering 1080p or lower, and then they use upscaling. And the upscaling doesn't really require power. I mean, I saw a video not long ago of, I think it was probably a PC that was still using a GTX 1080 Ti, and they were able to upscale to 8K and still get decent frame rates. And it's like, well, I mean, if a card that's that old can do 8K, technically, I mean, 8K in the same way that the PlayStation could do 8K, then okay. But it's like, no PC is rendering a game at 8K. It just is not happening, period. Not a chance. Maybe if it was like an old game, like an N64 game that got ported over, yeah, I could see that being the case. But, for like actual modern games, never. Well, I shouldn't say never. It's going to be a long time before we're able to render at 8K. And that's when it will get to the point that we have like probably TV screens that go up to like 15K or something. I don't know, 16K. At which point, and even then it might not, because we're at the point where 4K screens are abundant. Most people have 4K TVs, excluding me for sure. But none of the games, at least on the console side, are actually rendering at 4K there, or at least the vast majority of them are not rendering at 4K. And yeah, people need to temper their expectations a lot more. And if they had even just a little bit of understanding of how upscaling works, they would realize that it's not nearly as impressive as they think it is. And their consoles are not as powerful as they think they are. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just enjoy your games. It's like, you want to play 4K? By all means, go ahead. If I had a 4K monitor, I would be able to actually demonstrate how the upscaling works. I don't have any 4K screens, so I can't demonstrate it. But it's like, yeah, it's a pretty simple setting you can just do in the graphics card. It's not, I mean, it's like the game itself, you have it set rendering at a specific resolution, and then you can go into the graphics card and have it set so that it automatically upscales that to whatever size screen you have. And, whatever resolution you have. And I mean, that's kind of a simplified way of explaining how it works. And there's different kinds of upscaling you can use, but the reality is that that's all these consoles are doing with the vast majority of games, is they're just upscaling. So, which is why the Switch will probably be able to do 4K, is because, or Switch 2 will be able to do 4K, is because it's just upscaling. And otherwise, there's not a chance that it would ever be able to do 4K because, or at least, not the Switch 2, because it's just, you have to have a lot more power than what they can put into a handheld device. At least a handheld device that's going to be as cheap as the Switch 2 will probably be. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
No, sir.